Have you ever been mid-sentence reaching for a simple word and it just doesn't arrive on time? Or you walk into a room with a clear purpose and the moment you cross the doorway, your mind goes blank for a beat? If you're over 60, that can feel unsettling. And it's not something you should brush off with, well, I'm just getting old, or spiral into fear with, this must be something terrible. We need a calmer, more accurate middle ground. Here's why this conversation matters. Major health organizations like the World Health Organization and the Alzheimer's Association report that dementia affects tens of millions globally, and in the US, Alzheimer's becomes more common with age. Those numbers aren't here to scare you. They're here to explain why brain fog deserves a clear map. And I'll say this once in a way that fits naturally here. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. If your confusion is sudden, severe, or affecting safety, it's wise to speak with a licensed clinician promptly. Now let's define brain fog. Brain fog is not a medical diagnosis. It's a lived experience. Slower thinking, lower focus, and the feeling that everyday tasks take more mental effort than they used to. To make this useful, I'm going to use 3 simple natural categories. Category 1 is common changes that can still be often normal after 60. Category 2 is the often improvable zone. Fog driven by things like sleep, stress, hearing or vision strain, dehydration, and medication side effects. Category 3 is the needs a check zone, signals that shouldn't be ignored. Let's start with Category 1, common and often normal. The National Institute on Aging explains that normal aging can include occasionally misplacing things, sometimes forgetting names, and sometimes needing more time to learn new information, especially when you're tired or stressed. Here's what I tell my patients. If the name or word comes back later and your daily life still works, you're managing your home, your routines, your bills, your medications, that pattern often leans closer to normal aging plus a heavy mental load, not an emergency. Now, I want to ask you something simple because it points us toward the real cause fast. When you feel foggy, is it mostly when you're tired, mostly when you're stressed, or mostly when you're hungry and running on fumes? Hold that answer in your mind. Now, the second category, the one I actually find most hopeful, because it's the often improvable zone. This is the kind of brain fog that doesn't come from your brain giving up. It often comes from the brain working under conditions it was never designed to handle every day. Poor sleep, chronic stress, dehydration, medication side effects, low nutrients, or sensory strain from hearing and vision changes. Let me make this very practical. The National Institute on Aging specifically points out that memory problems can sometimes be linked to things like sleep problems, medication side effects, thyroid issues, low vitamin B12, depression or anxiety, and even major life stress. In other words, sometimes the fog is a signal to adjust the environment your brain is living in. A patient in his late 60s once told me, "Doctor, I feel like I'm fading by 2 p.m. When we looked closer, it wasn't a mysterious brain disease. It was a stack of small things: fragmented sleep, a new medication that made him groggy, and a breakfast that was basically coffee and sugar. We didn't chase a miracle. We cleaned up the basics." 2 weeks later, he said, "I still forget words sometimes, but I don't feel lost inside my own day." So if you're watching this in 2026 and you want a calm starting point, here's where I'd begin. First, sleep, because the brain does its cleanup work best when sleep is steady. Not perfect sleep, just consistent. Same wake time, morning light, and fewer late-night screens. Second, check your hydration and your first meal. Brain fog loves low fluids and unstable blood sugar. A simple upgrade is water first, then a breakfast with protein and fiber, not just something sweet that spikes and crashes. Third, review medications with a pharmacist or clinician. Many adults over 60 are on several prescriptions, and some combinations can quietly affect alertness, balance, or memory. This is not about stopping anything on your own. It's about asking the right questions. Fourth, don't overlook hearing and vision. If you strain to hear or see all day, your brain spends energy just decoding the world, leaving less for memory and focus. And finally, mood and stress. The NIA notes that depression, anxiety, and stressful life events can show up as confusion and forgetfulness. So if your fog comes with low motivation, low joy, or constant worry, that is not weakness. It's a signal worth supporting. Quick question before we move on. If you had to guess, which one is most true for you right now? Sleep, stress, meds, or sensory strain? Now, we're in the third category, the signs that need a check. Not because you should panic, but because ignoring the wrong kind of change is how small problems become big ones. Here's the simplest way I explain it. Normal aging is, I forget, but I can still live my life safely. A check is worth it when it becomes, I'm forgetting in a way that changes how I function. For example, if you're getting lost on routes you've driven for years, that's not the usual, where did I park moment. If you're having trouble following steps you used to do easily, like cooking a familiar recipe, managing bills, or using a device you've used for a long time, that's worth discussing. Another sign is when the people close to you notice changes before you do. A spouse says, "You've been repeating the same story 3 times this week." Or a friend says, "You seem more confused lately." And it's not just on a bad day. It's becoming a pattern. And then there's the most important red flag of all. Sudden change. If confusion shows up quickly over hours or days, especially with fever, new severe weakness, fainting, chest pain, or trouble speaking, that's not a wait-and-see situation. That's when you get professional help promptly, because sudden confusion can be caused by medical issues that need quick attention. Let me share a patient story in a respectful way. A woman in her early 70s came in with her daughter, and the daughter said, "She's just not herself this week." The patient kept apologizing. She thought she was being dramatic. But the truth is, when something changes suddenly, it's not drama, it's data. And catching the right thing early can make a real difference. Now here's what many people need most: how to bring this up in a doctor visit without feeling embarrassed. Because the hardest part is often finding the words. I want you to imagine you're not complaining, you're delivering a clear report. The best sentence to start with is simple. Over the past 20 months, I've noticed changes in memory and focus that are different from my usual. Then give 1 or 2 real examples. Not 20, not a life story, just 2 examples that show why it matters. Like, I missed a bill for the first time, or I got turned around in a familiar store, or I keep losing track of conversations. And here's the practical part that helps clinicians help you. Bring a current medication list, prescriptions, over-the-counter, sleep aids, allergy meds, and supplements. Many people don't realize how often brain fog connects to medication timing, interactions, or sedation. Also mention sleep quality, mood, hearing, and vision. Because sometimes what feels like memory decline is really poor sleep, untreated hearing loss, or depression wearing a mask. If you want a simple question to ask your clinician that keeps the visit focused, try this. Can we review the most common reversible causes first? Sleep, medications, mood, thyroid, vitamin B12, and then decide if I need further evaluation? That's not demanding, that's organized. And it often leads to a better plan. Now let me ask you something honestly. If you had to pick one fear under the fear, what is it? Is it, I don't want to be a burden? Is it, I'm scared I'm losing myself? You don't have to answer out loud, but naming it can be surprisingly calming. All right, here's a simple 1-week clarity routine, designed for real life after 60 in 2026. No perfection, no extreme rules. Just a steady rhythm that can support clearer thinking by reducing the most common fog drivers. Think of this as a 7-day experiment. You're not trying to prove anything. You're gathering evidence about your own body. Day 1 starts with 2 anchor points: wake time and morning light. Pick a wake time you can keep most days. Then get outside light within the first hour. Just a few minutes, even if it's cloudy. Why? Because your brain loves rhythm. A stable rhythm often improves sleep quality, and sleep is one of the strongest supports for attention and memory. Now hydration, but make it simple. Drink a full glass of water before coffee. Not because coffee is bad, but because many older adults start the day a little dry without realizing it. A dehydrated brain is a foggy brain. Next is breakfast. This is the easiest place to reduce the crash. Aim for protein plus fiber, Greek yogurt with berries and nuts, eggs with spinach and a slice of whole grain toast, oatmeal made with rolled oats plus yogurt or nuts. The goal is to avoid the sugar spike that feels good for 30 minutes, then leaves you mentally tired at 10 a.m. Now mental overload. For 1 week, pick 2 quiet windows. 1 in the morning, no news, no scrolling, no multitasking for the first 20 minutes after waking. And 1 in the evening, an hour before bed, reduce screens and bright light if you can. In 2026, this is one of the most underrated ways to improve mental clarity because your brain is constantly being pulled in 10 directions. Now, medication timing. This is not a do-it-yourself change, but it is a do-it-yourself awareness step. For 7 days, write down when you feel foggiest and what time you take medications, sleep aids, or allergy pills. If a pattern shows up, bring that pattern to your pharmacist or clinician and ask, could timing or side effects be contributing? Next, one small movement habit, not a workout, just circulation. A 10-minute walk after lunch, even inside your home, can support energy and reduce that afternoon mental dip for many people. Not because walking is magic, but because blood flow and mood often improve when the body isn't sitting for hours. And here's a gentle brain filing practice that older adults often love once they try it. At the end of the day, write 3 lines. 1 thing I did today. 1 thing I need tomorrow. 1 thing I'm grateful for. It sounds small, but it reduces the mental swirl that keeps people awake, and better sleep often supports better clarity. Now, how do you measure whether this helped? Pick one simple score from 1 to 10. Each day, rate your mental clarity at noon. That's it. After 7 days, look for a trend, not perfection. I have a small request. In the comments below, let me know which of these 7 steps you're going to try first. Sharing your plan is a simple way to make it stick, and it might encourage someone else reading the comments to start their own journey. And finally, if this video helped you feel calmer and more informed, please like and subscribe so the Longevity Lab 60 Plus can keep growing and reach more adults who need steady, practical guidance.